You've taken up sword and shield in defense of truth and virtue as a paladin. Well, actually you have to wade through being confused for one of those bloodsport gladiators whose icon shows two swords, even though that's a viper thing. But c'est la vie. Either way, you're going to want to know how to slaughter enemies and shrug off blows like a champ, and that's exactly what we're going to learn today. At level 1, you have only Fast Blade, so smack around like 2 mobs and you'll level up, which is great because you get your first new ability. Actually, it's not so great. What you get here is a core skill, Fight or Flight. What you don't get is any reason to actually use Fight or Flight right now. Fight or Flight boosts your damage by a whopping 25% for 20 seconds. But the enemies at this stage die in 2 hits regardless of what you do. I'll admit, I fell into the trap of not using Fight or Flight for this reason, and it was hard to change later on. Don't be like me. Use Fight or Flight on cooldown now, just to practice. At level 4, you get your second hit in the base combo, Riot Blade. Here's where we start Paladin math. This class is actually a very easy rotation once you get it down, but there are a few times where numbers mean you have to adjust, so buckle up. You might wonder, when should I use Fight or Flight? Well, let's break this down. Fight or Flight lasts 20 seconds. Your global cooldown speed is 2.5 seconds. So every 1-2 combo lasts 5 seconds. That means you'll get through 4 full 1-2 combos before Fight or Flight ends. If you pop Fight or Flight before Fast Blade, you'll use 1-2 4 full times, and then it will end before 1 again. If you pop Fight or Flight before Riot Blade, you'll use 2-1 4 full times, and it will end before 2 again. The damage is exactly the same. What the crap, Square Enix? You're not helping me learn this class. And you won't get your third hit, Rage of Halone, until level 26. 26! So what do? You plan for the future, and always use Fight or Flight between Fast Blade and Riot Blade, aka between 1 and 2. Why? Because when you do get Rage of Halone, the muscle memory will work to your advantage. Your global cooldown will still be around 2.5 seconds, meaning 8 abilities in the buff window. So if you start on 1 or Fast Blade, you get 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. If you start on 2, you get 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You didn't get in a hit with Fast Blade, the weakest of the combo. And if you wait until 3, you get 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. You get Fast Blade and not Riot Blade. Good grief, Eorzeon. This is pointless. You're doing all this work for just a little bit of potency. Why wouldn't I just use Fight or Flight on cooldown and maximize its uptime? Well, 2 reasons. Number 1, to better align with the future rotation. Paladin wants to delay its buff by a few hits to get the most out of its big moves later on. And in my opinion, the Paladin rotation is one of the cleanest in the game, and helps easily transition you into later gameplay with burst windows. And number 2, using buffs on cooldown uses them at awkward times when you don't get the full benefit. It's worth it to practice being more optimal early on. So, as of even level 4, we're going to make sure we practice using Fight or Flight before Riot Blade as often as possible. And that won't change for a very long time. Now that we've handled that math, it's time for a little math! Oh, come on! At level 6, we get Total Eclipse, an AoE attack around us with a potency of 120. The only determining factor in using a single target combo versus an AoE attack is how much damage it will do. If there's only one target, it's more potency to use Fast Blade, 150 potency, followed by Riot Blade, 260 potency. Over 2 hits, that averages out to 205 potency, which is better than a 120 potency AoE attack. Obvious, right? But with even 2 targets, using that same combo loses. Fast Blade plus Riot Blade hits for 410 potency, whereas 2 Total Eclipses hits for 240 on both targets, so 480 potency. The tricky part is that this changes at level 26, when you get Rage of Halone. 150 plus 260 plus Rage's 330 equals 740 potency on 1 target. 3 uses of Total Eclipse is 3 times 120 potency for 360 potency on 2 targets, so a total of 720. Now, 2 targets is better served by single target combo. And then it changes again at level 40 when you gain Prominence, your AoE combo move. Single target again is 150 plus 260 plus 330 equals 740, whereas AoE now goes like this. 120 plus 220 plus 120 equals 460, times 2 enemies equals 920 potency. This is the weaker of the two options too, where you could get 220 plus 120 plus 220 instead. Good grief! So how do we sum this up so it's easy to remember? Follow it in order of unlock. Once you get Total Eclipse, use it for 2. Once you get Rage of Halone, use it for 2. And once you get Prominence, use it for 2. To recap, we've gotten Fast Blade and Riot Blade as a combo, gotten Fight or Flight, which always comes before Riot Blade until much later, and we've gotten Total Eclipse for AoE. Next up is Shield Bash, and my easiest recommendation for this ability is to just not even put it on your hotbar. You get Low Blow in 2 levels. You also get Iron Will at level 10, and the easy thing to do here is always ensure it's on. There's no content from 1 to 49 in which you will ever need to have it off. At level 15, you get Shield Lob, but only if you've done your level 15 class quest. This is such an important ability that you should get it as early as possible. Not only is it your only ranged attack until level 64, it increases enmity on whatever it hits. This is great for drawing groups of enemies to you early, hitting things outside of melee range, and doubly ensuring that you're keeping aggro as you move. How do you use it? Slap that button as you approach a group of enemies. It will hit the nearest, send the enemies your way, and by the time you reach them, your global cooldown is just finishing, allowing you to snag the group with an AoE attack. Then move on to the next group, using Shield Lob as you run to deal more damage and increase enmity, since they'll be out of range of your blade. Level 15 also brings the Provoke roll action. Another way to handle pulls of 3 or so enemies is to not rely on the AoE move, but to use Shield Lob on one, weave in Provoke, and Shield Lob the third. It takes a little more practice, but it's pretty clean. At level 18, add in Interject whenever you see this pulsing cast bar to stop the move. Reprisal at level 22 adds a mitigation that is best used before area attacks for bosses and on cooldown with big mob groups. Its 60-second cooldown means you can pretty much use it on every pull after your initial mitigation drops off. At level 26, you finally get Rage of Halone, finishing your 1-2-3 combo. Remember, when you unlock a combo move, that's when you use it for 2 targets. So used Fast Blade, Riot Blade, and Rage of Halone on 2 targets now. Remember, you still want to use Fight or Flight before Riot Blade, so that you can get the most damage out of your 1-2-3 combo. So for example, when you're opening up a fight, you're going to start with Fast Blade, weave in Fight or Flight, then go Riot Blade, Rage of Halone, and repeat. At 30, you can get the Paladin Job Crystal, which comes with the Spirits Within move. It's just extra damage, and so you should use it on cooldown. Except, note the 30-second cooldown time. Now note the 60-second Fight or Flight cooldown time. You want to use Fight or Flight first, then Spirits Within to squeeze out an extra 67 potency for free. Spirits Within will come around again in 30 seconds, and after that it will cool down right after Fight or Flight. It's a great circle and a simple way to learn buff window timing. At level 32, you get Arm's Length. Add it to your defensive set, because slowing enemies' hit speed by 20% means 20% less damage. I've often said I'll cover this ability in detail, and I will, eventually. At 35, you'll get Sheltron, which is a kind of quick time mitigation. It lasts for only 4 seconds, but grants 15% damage reduction. This allows you to essentially see an attack coming, use Sheltron, and prevent a decent chunk for only the cost of 50 Oath Gauge. But what even is Oath Gauge? It's not very complicated. It simply raises by 5 with every auto attack. At a weapon speed of 2.24 and 10 attacks to get to 50 gauge, you can expect to be able to use a Sheltron around every 22 seconds. Level 38 grants Sentinel, which is a huge defensive boost. Lasting 5 less seconds than Rampart, but preventing 10% more damage, you now have 2 heavy defensive moves, in addition to Reprisal and Arm's Length. My advice is to use your strongest mitigation first, so this will take place of Rampart as you finish your first pull. See if this method works for you. Pull one wall-to-wall group, pop Sentinel. Use Reprisal when it falls off. For group 2, use Rampart, and Reprisal when it falls off. At that point, you've probably reached the boss. Don't be afraid to use your mitigations during the boss fights as well. What's truly important isn't so much which mitigation do I use on trash pulls, but that you are indeed using mitigations, covering as much of the span of the pull as possible. Best practice will have you controlling the damage level so that your healer isn't subjected to huge damage spikes. And for bosses, the method changes. It is worth getting in the habit of using a mitigation before a tank buster. Generally I say Sentinel in this case, because it's the stronger one, or using Reprisal before a room-wide attack to avoid the most damage. Now, level 40 brings you Prominence, which is an AoE combo move. What does that mean? We unlocked it, we use it on 2 targets. Your AoE becomes 1-2, 1-2, repeat. Total Eclipse, Prominence, repeat. Now this is a 1-2 combo, which means Fight or Flight isn't going to affect your damage output either way, but it's still probably good practice to go Total Eclipse, Fight or Flight, Prominence, to keep in line with the Fast Blade and Riot Blade combo. At level 45, we get Cover, which is another Oath Gauge ability that allows you to absorb all the damage intended for another player if you're within tether range. Ultimately what this means in practice is, oh, the healer is very low, I'll pop this just in case. If the healer is alive, the healer will heal. That's kind of their job. If not, you can use it to save a DPS for a bit, but unless it's a high-level dungeon where you have insane survivability, you're probably dead anyway. Cover currently has a tether range of 20 yalms, which is the same distance as Shield Lob. Keep that in mind because if you're too far, Cover won't do anything until you're back in range. The text that says does not activate with certain attacks is essentially saying you can't use Cover to avoid a scripted wipe mechanic. It's got a 2-minute cooldown too, so really it's a learn by experience kind of ability. There's also Shirk at 48, but that's a role-specific action that doesn't see too much use anymore, so I'll cover it in the further tanking guide. And that is Paladin up to 49. You don't get a lot of rotation changes. You get 1, 2, 3, and an AoE combo of 1, 2, and you're always using Fight or Flight after the first hit in the combo. At level 50, we don't actually see too much change right away, but things like working with burst windows will be better explained in part 2, and we'll also touch on how to use our invulnerability move, Hallowed Ground. I'll also break down why I think Hallowed Ground is objectively the best invulnerability, despite its cooldown time in that video. So let's sum up everything we talked about. Get in the habit of using Fight or Flight right before Riot Blade, or Prominence for continuity's sake. Hold Spirits Within until after popping Fight or Flight to ensure the best damage, and keep your window aligned. So what that looks like if you're past level 30 is opening with Fast Blade, then weaving in Fight or Flight, and Spirits Within before Riot Blade. Pull enemies with Shield Lob and either AoE to catch them all, or Shield Lob with Provoke Weave. When you're finished pulling enemies, make sure to pop a strong defensive cooldown and spam AoE moves, comboing if you're above level 40. Remember, the rule is the latest combo finisher unlocked is the mode I use for 2 enemies. Use Sheltron as an attack is finishing its cast to mitigate 15%. At this stage, you're kind of like a chunkier and weaker DPS, using a 1-2-3 combo and ensuring that you use Fight or Flight and Spirits Within before Riot Blade for the best timing. Each tank plays fairly similar to this point too, but I will cover the individual differences. Stand firm for truth and justice, Paladins, or risk your life in glorious blood sport for money, gladiators, and I'll see you next time.